Thank you everyone for coming, and I will pass this over to our presenters.
Thank you. Stephen's going to share his screen. So as we start, we invite you to read a portion of the Lake Oswego School District Land Acknowledgement. We recognize these communities as we seek to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, staff, and members of this community. So welcome to our design presentation on Lakeridge Middle School. I am Abby Dacey. I'm a principal at Mahlum Architects, and like all three of us, was part of the design process from the very beginning. I think we interviewed in 2017, and the school opened in 2021 amidst the pandemic. On the right, you see a number of our other team members from Mahlum who are also part of the design process.
Yeah, my name is Rene Barent. I was a project designer, and my focus at Mahlum is basically the learner. I'm in the K-12 studio, a special focus giving to the early learner and the teenage learner, this is a great example of.
And hello, I'm Stephen Endy. I was the project architect for Lakeridge Middle School, and happy to have worked with Abby and Renee on this project. Eager to continue evolving our sustainability practices.
Great, and here you see our broader team. Obviously, this project wouldn't have been possible without the input of many very skilled consultants, engineers, trade partners, and Skanska general contractor. So we, like I said, interviewed for this project in 2017, and very quickly the district came to us and they said, you know, we have a school, it's crumbling, the soil conditions are poor, it's got cracks through it, it's inefficient, it's located in 2 different buildings, it's not safe. We want to create something very new and very different, and we really want to think about how we design for learners for the next 100 years. So that was our challenge. I'll quickly just give you an overview of what our design process was like, and then Renee will describe the building, and then we'll share some more detail about some of those goals. So here you actually see Principal Kurt Schultz. So we'll talk about him. We've often presented this project with him. He was there from the very beginning and was a really active part of all of our community meetings. So we did work very closely with the community. On the next slide, you'll see these are the 4 different types of groups we worked with. They might appear fairly typical, but I will say that the breadth of voices and the strength of their input pushed us to explore design solutions like never before. So the content of the community workshops spanned from early goal setting all the way to a full-scale mock-up. Here you see 2 students who you will see again a few times. They're Andrew and Alina. They were both in middle school during the design process. They're actually in college now, which makes the rest of us feel pretty old that has happened. And we're still doing the same thing, but we'll share some of their insights throughout this show. On the next slide, you can see some of the early goals that the community was developing. And some of the words that you can't see on those cards are things like create an adaptive space for future growth, create hands-on experimental learning, make it completely self-sufficient, net zero, go for universal design, think about diverse learning spaces, make sure we don't stigmatize spaces for students with disabilities, and create non-gendered restrooms. So you'll see some of those as we go along. We also held a lot of meetings with district specialists, staff, affinity groups. Here you see a group of students who were helping us validate some of our more unusual directions, like distributing the commons area and installing fewer lockers. And as we started working with a group called the Educational Specification Team, originally the district had said, just build it like another school. And they literally handed us the specification from a nearby district and said, just build it like this. But as we started to work with them and talk about the type of learning they want to create and the type of collaborating they want to support, it very quickly became apparent that that educational specification they had handed us was not going to work. So we started digging deeper, working with them on what those activities were. And I can still remember the assistant superintendent coming to us and saying, why would we have to choose when and where we do these different things? Can we do all of these things in one space? So you can see the next slide is where we started to really explore that. So originally, again, Here's a nice nerdy program slide. That original specification we looked at was all 900 square foot classrooms, separate STEAM rooms, the idea that you would go to a different place in the building to do exploratory learning. And we realized that wasn't going to work. So we actually worked through the program with them quite a bit and ended up allocating all of that STEAM space to the classrooms. We also took some space out of the media. You can see that little green bar got thinner. And we created a wonderful media center. It's right in the heart of the school, but we were able to overlap some of the spaces with adjacent common spaces. So we still had all the functionality without all the space. And then we put all that space into some classrooms, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Here you see our design advisory team. So this was the group that really helped us distill comments and synthesize and prioritize all the goals that you saw in the community meeting. Andrew and Alina were part of this group. And this is where we tested ideas. Here you see an example of one of those early exercises where we asked them to imagine learning decades in the future. And then we have a short clip of Andrew as a 7th grader explaining his idea.
We thought it would be better if it was more of a student-directed design, so it's still very structured, but in a way that the student can learn in the best way for them. Instead of just being like a tight classroom, then they can do that and go outside to learn. Like we have the garden, for example, because instead of just like researching the textbook how plants grow, you could go outside to watch them grow.
Yeah, and we want to give some design context too, and basically breaking that up into 2 components. The first is, where are we designing? Because one of our focus today, of course, is the biophilic design approach we took. And so it's, it makes sense to start with our site, which was actually basically the indigenous people's white oak savanna. It was a beautiful, field, and these mature white oak trees in the middle of it, which actually became major components, go to the next one, of our design. This was a replacement school. I mentioned that as a technical aspect here. We actually, had 2 schools on site, an old elementary school, which then at one point when we came on board housed the 6th grade, and an old middle school, which is the point we were involved, housed the 7th to 8th grade. But again, these beautiful oak trees are everywhere and sometimes very close to where we had to build, sometimes directly where we had to build. So using the trees and the beautiful aesthetic they bring as part of a major component for our biophilic design. And also what the student was talking about here is like making the exterior more accessible visually, because you had one part of the school was this kind of U of O kind of cluster building from the 60s, very cool looking, but with very limited access to the outside. And some of the major spaces like the cafeteria, some of the breakout spaces inside the building had absolutely no connection to the exterior, to the beautiful nature. And so the second question, of course, is not only where, but who are we designing for? And let's hear from whom are we designing for.
What I thought when I first came to the school was amazed at how it turned out.
I looked at the trees that they use as like columns and I was like, wow, that is really cool.
And there's a lot of windows, which I like because it brings in a lot of natural light.
I'd say it pops and it's really fresh.
It looked like a college campus. It feels like I'm going to get a good education. It feels like I'm going to have a good day.
Yeah, and that was kind of a key phrase. It feels like I'm going to have a great day. I mean, what more can you hope for when you design a school? That really people are excited, the students are really excited. And let's dig deeper into who these kids are. These are basically teenage learners. And for us, designing for the teenage learner means designing for the emotional brain, a transition in the brain we all go through, a neurological shift that really focuses on the reward center and the fear and anxiety center around the age of 13 to 14. So exactly the age we're at here. And we want to take advantage of those. And again, let's actually, since we had 2 actually specimen of teenage learners helping us doing the design, which go to the next one maybe, we'll hear more from them and their aspirations during this kind of exciting time. So first maybe Andrew and then Alina.
My name is Alina. I'm a rising junior at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm majoring in biology with a concentration in neuroscience on the pre-med track. And I attended Lakeridge Junior High School from 6th through 8th grade, and I graduated from 8th grade in 2018. I was a member of the design advisory group, so I was one of 2 students who was joined by tons of architects, teachers and other professionals from the school, and we all kind of came together and like discussed our vision for a new Lakeridge Junior High School or Lakeridge Middle School.
My name is Andrew, and I am a rising sophomore at Cornell University studying architecture, and I attended Lakeridge Junior High from 6th grade to 8th grade. I was involved by working with the architects and designers. I went on school tours and was involved in community meetings where we would take the input of the community, and especially on the school tours, the architects would often ask my input and kind of just see how things would actually work for a student from that perspective and not just architecturally like for an architect.
Yeah, so that was really great to have them on board and actually have them come back into the school, you know. So again, let's dive a little deeper into what it means to design for the emotional brain, because so we have the reward center, which means there's a lot of curiosity and a really craving for novelty inherent in each teenage learner. So basically, how can we put all the programs and everything on display? Because at this age, you want to introduce the teenage learner to as many different options and pathways they can take, because they should try everything out and see what sticks and where they maybe find a lifelong center. The Fear and Anxiety Center is actually which ties directly into our biophilic design approach here, because there's also at once there's the fear of social isolation, so providing a lot of socializing spaces for larger and smaller groups, and even for students maybe to step away from a larger group but still feel connected to them, as well as like generally just lowering the threshold of anxiety and stress that going to school can bring for every teenage learner. And that's where our biophilic design palette comes in. In order to design for the teenage learner, we developed what we call like this loop organization of a school, which basically allows the students to circulate to the school and walk past every program that's offered during the, at the school basically, and peek into classrooms, peek into like music and drama and arts and whatnot and science, and just have a look and see what's going on. And what is really important, with this kind of loop organization, of course, is a centerpiece, which in our case is a beautiful courtyard with a lot of nature. Because one of the things we heard also, students like enjoy really taking a shortcut. It really reduces time during transition, but it also allows students to get some, catch some fresh air while they're actually going from one classroom to the other. Which means actually, if you go to the next one, we want to make sure in each of the corners of this loop, we have connections, visual connections to the courtyard, and also doors that allow you to get out. Visual connections to help you orient yourself in the building. So you're using that exterior space in the center, really to understand where you are and where you're trying to go. And then, of course, having the outdoor connections, the doors, to really allow you to take advantage and cut across, blow up some steam on the way to class. Go to the next one, which shows like the organization with this huge really courtyard in the center. Again, this being a school for 1,100 students, so a lot of students. So it's kind of a nice size courtyard for that. And go to the next one. We're highlighting all the mature white oaks we were able to preserve. Some of them were pretty on the edge. Their jury was out, until actually now they're still alive, which is great, because especially the one in the upper right-hand corner was really tricky. We were actually make it happen. But again, working with the contractor was really great. Go to the next one, because of course the best thing from a biophilic design aspect is of course to preserve the nature you have and really celebrate these trees in their beauty inherently. But again, and then the next one shows like how we're framing these views. This is a view. The next one, out of the covered play. Again, like looking at the beautiful trees and framing them with the architecture. Of course, we could not basically save all the trees, and some of the students already referred to the idea. We worked with this really kind of fantastic company. We learned about Whole Trees, which is a company that basically evaluates and scans existing trees you have on your site, and then they do a structural evaluation and recommends which portions of the trees you can actually use for structural bearing columns. And so we're actually using a total of about 24, 28 or something like this in the project, a pretty big amount. And they really, of course, help with the structural qualities to, to not only bring form and texture, which is extremely important for biophilic design, but also just like the coloration, and it really changes the mood and has a huge impact on the students. Go to the next
Something
one.
I really remember about my time on the design advisory team is when we were trying to figure out how to incorporate nature in this really cherished site and kind of elements of the old building and the old site into this new building. And the way we went about doing that was by implementing the old trees as columns throughout the school. And I think that kind of created this really beautiful sense of nature and value for the students in the community within the school.
And another element we were actually blessed with or cursed with, depending who you talk to, were these huge rocks and boulders. They actually came all the way from the Missoula Flats, actually were deposited in the whole Lake Oswego area. And of course, they created actually some of the unstable soil conditions that basically resulted in the existing building having to be replaced. However, we were able to, or we had to, remove them from the soil and then reuse them actually on site. Some of them actually the size of a VW bus, quite large, as like seating opportunities again. Again, using a natural element, kids love those much more than benches actually. And actually at the entrance here, I must say they also serve the safety security because instead of having bollards and other things and barriers, they do create a more protective approach to the building together with the bike parking and the kind of whole tree columns we have in front. The next image shows like how we are using wood throughout, not only with the whole trees, but we have like glulam beams, we have DLT ceilings in the cafeteria. We have this beautiful like all wood like guardrails. We were able to really strip away as much steel as possible, and to combine like the concrete natural appearance of the concrete unfinished walls and the floors with the warmth of the wood and create these spaces, like you see the students really, that's exactly what we intended there to happen. Like the students can step away. It's kind of really easy to supervise because it's a circulation area, but they feel like they have a moment maybe for themselves and can take a little breather there. Again, all part of the kind of refuge and prospect idea of biophilic design.
I'm glad I can go here because I feel like it's a very safe environment, welcoming, and just like overall like happy, bright, warm, like just like fun. I love the school, it's awesome.
And this is a view out of our library Abby talked about. We had to shift a lot of spaces around because actually in the end, actually, I think we're actually pretty efficient, I think, in the square foot per student ratio compared to other middle schools, but the school doesn't feel cramped. And so one thing here, if you take the next one, maybe how we reimagined the library as there's a quiet seating portion that can be actually closed off with a glass door, and so there's like peace and quiet in there and the book collection. But ideally, this door opens up actually, and then part of the cafeteria that's right in front and otherwise only used during dining or eating can actually be part of the library, and so that's how we were kind of forced to reimagine some of these spaces. This is a view of this kind of sliding door. And the next one, even within, there's like, it's all about choices, different scales. We have in the library, a larger, tall seating space, and we have the edge space right at the window. And there's actually a memorial that was initiated by one of the students, actually, who went to Lake Oswego Middle School here, Lakeridge Middle School, about Alter Wiener, a Holocaust survivor. And this was a special memorial corner that was actually carved out. It was really nice that the student actually created this whole movement around Altarina. And unfortunately he died a couple of years ago in our area. But actually she wrote a book about his life, and that was actually memorialized in the library. Again, another great example of student activities and impact had on the design and on the legacy of the school.
For one word, my first impression was wow. This is such a completely different place from when I went to school, and I think walking in, how beautiful the campus is. One thing that stuck out to me really was that how much greenery there was. I go to school in St. Louis now, and I constantly make it my personality trait that I'm from Portland, Oregon. Our state, and just Pacific Northwest, is known for our greenery, the beautiful nature, the beautiful weather, and I feel like that's kind of like a hidden gem, but seeing that's, showcased all throughout this campus was something that made me feel very proud and really connected me back to my roots and why I will always choose to come back.
Awesome. So I'm going to touch back on what we did to design classrooms. And we actually didn't end up calling these classrooms. We called them learning studios. So in the introduction, we talked about how do we support different kinds of learning in one space. And we worked really closely with the educational specification team. So that was a series of teachers and administrators to test a lot of different ideas. Like on the left here in the diagram, you see an activity where we were actually imagining different learning scenarios and small groups of students and what they would be doing, whether they were in the classroom, outside the classroom, breaking into different sizes. And we quickly realized that limiting the classroom to 900 square feet, which is fairly typical, or providing really large but unprogrammed extra spaces, neither of those really worked because teachers were reluctant to send students out into whether it was the hall or just kind of a big area. It didn't really work with how they taught. So that really shifted what we did. If you go to the next page, I can show you what that model was. So we actually created pairs of classrooms. So on the left, you see a classroom that is the small, kind of a typical size classroom, basically. And on the right, you see a larger classroom. So we cobbled some extra square footage from the program and created this space. The two spaces are connected by a sliding glass door. They're really awesome doors that seal very well acoustically. They also have a visual screen across that nice green curtain, so you don't have to see between the rooms. But what we found is that teachers actually, they open up the rooms, they go back and forth between the rooms, and they can utilize both spaces. Two teachers do. So yeah, the next slide is a image. We actually, because this was relatively unusual, the principal, Kurt Schultz, helped us figure out a space within the existing building that we could mock up the classroom. So for an entire year, we had these two rooms. They happened to be connected to each other. They were right about the same size. This is an image of a whiteboard with some magnetic pieces of furniture so that a teacher could go in and think about, well, how would I configure the room? What would I teach in this room? When would I go into the other room? And the next slide shows a photo from that space. So like you can see on the right side, we had a big poster up saying, this is a sliding door. So obviously it wasn't a sliding door, but they had some opportunities to test flexible furniture, flexible technology, the idea of switching rooms. They actually had a green screen wall, which we ended up not putting in the final design. But it was really this opportunity for every student and every teacher in the school to imagine what the space would be like for a year before they moved in. So in the floor plan, Renee showed you the loop circulation. So on the ground floor, you can loop completely, and then on the top, it's a C shape. So two-story building. The golden color is all the learning studios, the paired studios. There are a couple of individual classrooms, the green ones, and then on the lower level in the south bar, the blue is the science rooms, which were not paired studios, but they all take that the footprint of the larger module. And then functionally, what happens is a lot of different things. I'd say, some teachers don't use the pass-through at all, but some use it for creating a third space between the two classrooms that becomes like a kind of a hangout place or a quiet place or a zone between the rooms. Some use it so that they put, if they're having a more active class on one side, they go into the larger room, while say on the smaller side, they might be doing test taking. Or in the case if there's not somebody in the partner classroom, sometimes a teacher will set up a lab in one room or an art activity, do the instructional portion in the left room and then move into the right-hand room. We also talk to a lot of teachers who do things like gallery walks, walking through the spaces. And then here are some of the affordances within the classroom. So we've got these big double sinks and then power on the ceiling. So that allows a lot of different activities to happen. So instead of, oftentimes in school classrooms, we get the, schools will say, oh, we don't even need sinks in classrooms. But that means you can't do anything messy, and you can't even fill up water bottles. You have to send kids out of the classroom to go, get water. So having water and the opportunity to clean in a classroom is actually really transformational. So is power on the ceiling. We designed this building in 2018, 2019, before the pandemic. Now everybody is one-to-one technology. And while they're supposed to show up to school with charged Chromebooks, they don't. So the overhead power gets a lot of use. All the furniture is also really flexible. So those tabletops can all be flipped up and rolled out of the way. So teachers move furniture a lot. I've seen them use it as a backdrop or like a screen for a puppet show, all sorts of different things. And I think the next slide shows some of the other ways that teachers have customized the kit parts they have in the classroom to really work. I mean, there's one room that for a while was literally a scene shop. So, the fact that you could transform a space, there's concrete floors everywhere, completely removable furniture, really lended that ability to transform. I think the other thing I'll just touch on briefly with COVID was, we moved into this building for the first time during COVID. And just some of the design aspects, having the operable windows in every classroom, which Stephen will talk about in a minute, brought a lot of comfort. I think, just the feeling of comfort. It has a few other functions as well, but the feeling of comfort and fresh air was really strong, as was that loop circulation, the building to go up and down different staircases so they could do one-way circulation. They could also use the amount of space they had for the classrooms to really space students out as needed, even when, with one teacher able to keep supervision over all the students. Here's a photo of final room.
I see collaboration as something that is so important for any discipline that you're learning in, and being able to see my middle school really support that, from language arts to probably science to math to everything like that, I feel like it's only going to build the foundation of our students even more better than ever before.
Here you see the classroom from outside in the hallway where some of that collaboration happens. In fact, we were just talking to a teacher who said how much she loves the big window, because she can step out in the hall with a student and do some, have a conversation, and still really supervise the classroom that's happening inside. I'd say most teachers leave their doors open too, which is really nice. And then here you see some of the staircases, which also become spaces that teachers bring classes sometimes to do the pre-lecture and then go into the room for a lab or an activity.
I'll speak to the sustainability aspects. From the beginning of the project, the district and the community had big aspirations for sustainability, including a path to net zero energy, mass timber construction, and resilient design. We worked with the design advisory team to explore various ways to incorporate sustainability in the school. And working with our team at PAE, established performance targets, looking to reduce energy use intensity by 70%, which aligned with the 2030 challenge for design completion in 2019 of a 22 EUI. All of these combined strategies lead to that reduced goal, which qualified the project for the enhanced financial incentives from Energy Trust of Oregon's Path to Net Zero program. We designed all electric systems at Lakeridge with no natural gas utilities on site. A full service kitchen provides food for the cafeteria. This allows the school to become carbon neutral as the evolving electricity grid becomes fully renewable in the future. Working with our Pacific Northwest climate, we focused the design on student and teacher comfort, looking beyond just air temperature and humidity, but also focusing on radiant temperature from the exposed concrete floors and electric cove wall heaters, as well as air movement from ceiling fans. As we look to balance these performance goals with our project budget, we evaluated 3 mechanical system options at the end of schematic design. First, we established a baseline using traditional variable air volume package units with full air conditioning throughout the school. This code compliant system did not meet the net zero goals, but it was estimated at $4.3 million of equipment costs. The first alternate we considered, which would lead to the net zero goal, was a ground source heat pump using horizontal slinky systems under the over-excavated foundation. This approach would have added an additional $1.3 million of equipment cost. Thirdly, we looked at a passive cooling model, a hybrid approach, which focused mainly on ventilation through the mechanical system and a robust envelope. This approach eliminated $1.2 million of HVAC equipment while adding $800,000 of insulation and high performance windows for an overall net savings of $400,000, which gave us a path forward to break through the cost barrier, looking to balance the goals for performance and budget. At this point, we had a big idea. We knew our energy model showed that passive cooling could work in our climate. We needed confirmation that this could work for the district and that they'd be comfortable moving forward into design development. In the Willamette Valley, summertime afternoon temperatures can reach as high as 100 degrees Fahrenheit and above, while corresponding nighttime and early morning low temperatures are about 30 degrees cooler. Passive design allows us to ride the diurnal swing to maintain comfort throughout the day. Working with PAE, we had a unique opportunity to tour the Oregon Episcopal School lower school building, which is a similar passive cooling system. It was a hot afternoon in late July, about 97 degrees at 3 p.m. We gathered outside with the Lake Oswego facility team and Principal Kurt Schultz. And as we all entered together, we were amazed at how cool and refreshing it felt indoors. The night flushing had pre-cooled the exposed concrete floors, and the ventilation air was tempered about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than the outside temperatures. Our client group was able to hear directly from their peers what it's like to operate a building like this, and heard examples of how teachers were instructed to open windows and close windows to maintain comfort. This collective experience was essential for us to confirm that this approach may work at Lakeridge Middle School and gave us the confidence to proceed into design development. Expanding on this concept for a much larger public middle school, we focused the hybrid passive cooling approach in the Learning Studio classrooms and the Commons cafeteria, where operable windows are easily managed by teachers and staff. That's shown in lighter blue, whereas in the darker blue areas, we used a conventional variable air volume system with full air conditioning for spaces that were more active, including the music room, drama, and the gyms, where large gatherings would happen, as well as administration offices where the private spaces were too small for passive airflow. Maintaining year-round comfort with reduced mechanical equipment relies on a robust envelope. We compared various options of enhanced insulation and high-performance windows, in this case studying the cost-effectiveness of triple-pane fiberglass windows, which allowed us to reduce the effective wall assembly to R30. In winter months, the well-insulated roof, walls, and floors, as well as the high-performance triple-pane fiberglass windows can hold in the heat generated from the teachers and students, the lighting, and the devices to keep the classroom warm throughout the winter days. When it's especially cold or below freezing outside for those few days of the year, the electric cove heaters provide radiant heat directly to each person. In summer months, the central dedicated outside air ventilation system provides fresh air through the ductwork. At night is used for night flushing to cool down the exposed concrete floor slabs, and that which can later absorb the heat from teachers and students throughout the afternoon. As teachers arrive in the morning, a green indicator light turns on, instructing them to open the windows and push the button to activate the roof vents at the top of the stack exhaust. This allows airflow to come in through the windows and out the roof. As late morning and early afternoon temperatures rise, the red indicator light turns on, which automatically closes those roof dampers and instructs the teachers to close and lock the windows. This allows that robust envelope to keep the spaces cool throughout the hot afternoon. During passive cooling mode, those open windows allow for the air intake, while we use 36 stack exhausts from each classroom to allow the warm air to rise and exhaust out the roof. At the common space, we have 3 fan-assisted duct exhausts leading out through the roof, pulling cool air in through those commons cafeteria windows. By engaging with the teachers and students to open windows and maintain comfort within their classrooms, it really brings sustainability home in a tangible way. We use the green accent color on all operable windows to make this interaction visible. Teachers and students are more aware of the involvement in the outdoor conditions outside. After completing construction, after returning to school, from the pandemic, and after the first year of fully occupied in-person learning, we were excited that the measured energy performance met the predicted target of 22 EUI, energy use intensity. Since then, the district has installed a 190 kilowatt solar PV array, further reducing our energy use toward a net zero goal. But the real success came back in the form of post-occupancy feedback of the 80 teachers and staff who participated. 95% responded they were acceptable, satisfied, and very satisfied for thermal comfort and natural ventilation systems. We heard from teacher interviews that they enjoyed opening the windows and felt comfortable throughout the year. This focus on comfort and the robust envelope lends itself to resiliency in the form of passive survivability. With natural daylight throughout the school, the spaces in the building can be habitable and often comfortable, even while utility outages may occur. Additionally, typical schools in Oregon are required to be designed to a Seismic Risk Category IV. The district upgraded the entire building to Risk Category IV, allowing for faster recovery after an earthquake, lending itself to support community recovery. Additionally, we took some simple measures to improve resilience for the gathering spaces shown here in orange. There's a backup generator which provides power for critical utility, safety systems, lighting, kitchen equipment, and dedicated outlets. In that service yard in the back, there's a water connection valve for a potable truck to deliver water for the restrooms and kitchen. As well, in the gym, we have emergency exhaust vents at the roof if this space needed additional ventilation as a shelter. The mixed mode ventilation system at Lakeridge allowed for resilience in additional ways that were unexpected. In the fall of 2020, the Portland metro area and Lake Oswego communities were faced with two extreme conditions. The ventilation systems at Lakeridge allowed us to adapt to the pandemic with 100% outside air and filtration, supplied with displacement ventilation, which you can see with that low louver on the left, delivers fresh outside air across the classroom where students are seated, circulating back out through heat exchangers to the exhaust out the roof above. Additionally, operable windows further enhance ventilation, as Abby mentioned before. And also adapting for wildfire smoke, with the easterly winds that year, we've considered, that this natural ventilation system has an override where it can be operated with the windows closed. Those high-performing windows are also well sealed against outside air, and the ventilation equipment can be set to pre-cool the space as needed, operating not at its full efficiency, but still able to provide comfort in those conditions. Additionally, we consider adding extra wide slots within the air handlers for additional filtration of any outdoor wildfire smoke.
All right, we just have a few more ideas to share, and then we'll open it up for questions. So let's see, the district had come to us and really was interested in hearing about how we could create a more equitable school. So if you go to the next slide, we asked students, we said, what makes an equitable school? And they said, well, it's, or we asked the district, excuse me, and they said, it needs to be universal. We need to create a space where diversity is celebrated and signal that we want you here. So remember, this was 2018 when we were designing. It was way before I think some of the current vocabulary that's come into our design processes was in place. And so we developed a framework. Across the top here, you see those district goals. And then we thought about the different types of challenges that students might experience in a space. So whether it's cognitive, physical, emotional, just other learning needs, cultural differences, and gender identity. And then we developed a series of aspirations. What did we hope we could accomplish? And then what were some of the potential solutions that we could enact in our design to do that? So I will share 3 of those solutions with you. The first was thinking about students, how they get here. Lake Oswego has some very high-income people, but also has people who are not coming from that background. And we wanted to make sure that every student, as they entered the building, really felt like they were entering as a community. So we designed the site so that whether you come by bike, by walking, by bus, by your parents dropping you off, everybody's coming to that same pathway and that same front door. So it sets up that sense of community from the first moment you start your school. The next thing, Renee in the beginning showed those photos of the existing school, the previous school building, which was pretty dismal and had very little opportunity really for students to see the outside from the inside or to even be outside in a safe environment. So we created a range of spaces that students have access to, especially during lunchtime. So we have the courtyard in the middle that students often love to go out and eat. I think it's the most popular place. They can also be under a cover up next to the building. Here you see. And then inside the cafeteria, there's this study bar along the edge, which is a great seating opportunity if you're sitting in a group of one or group of two, which is great when your social situation might be changing. And then there's two other opportunities. On the left in this image, you see some tall kind of standing height tables. It feels something like you might see at a college or in a coffee shop. And then on the right, you see the more traditional cafeteria type tables. Also in that area to the left has a lower ceiling. That's a dowel laminated timber ceiling, which has acoustic material in the slots. And so it really absorbs a lot of sound in the space on the left. On the right, it's a taller volume. That's the audience chamber for the stage and the performance space. There are acoustic treatments up high in that space, but they're very different in terms of just their quality of space. I was there the other day, and when you get 900 or 1,000 kids in this space, it can get really loud. So even just being able to step out into the courtyard and have the deceleration of the sound was really a great opportunity for students who need to regulate their surroundings. And as you can see, we asked students, where do you eat? And there was a lot of different feedback on what they liked and how they sought out their locations. The final piece I'll share is that when it came to equity, the idea of restroom design and where do students experience discomfort or threats within the school environment, restrooms comes up a lot. So we worked with the district and actually created every single toilet room to be a gender inclusive environment. So everybody has their own stall. Each one has a full walls, a door, ventilation, and then they opened into a shared area with wash basins for hand washing. And where the hand washing is located always strategically so that it's very easy to passively supervise as you're walking by the spaces. And as you see on the next slide, the district actually studied the behaviors at the new Lakeridge compared to their other middle school in town, and they found that incidents within the restrooms went down to only 2% of behavioral incidences compared to 12% in a more typical gendered restroom. So not having these zones where kids go in and adults aren't in, and activities can happen, bullying can happen, other kinds of challenges. So it's really working quite well within the school, and they're very happy with it. And we have one little video.
The kids have been incredibly engaged, and I can see they like going to school now.
One thing that I would tell the voters is that you made kids want to come to school more.
I would just give a big thank you, because just this environment feels so much nicer and just feels more safe and secure than the old school.
I love this school. It's like it's an amazing school, and it's such an upgrade from our last school.
Great. So I think it's time for questions, and happy to go back and show you stuff if you've got details.
So if anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also put your question in the chat box. Sometimes it takes a little bit. I think, Abby, do you have your chat box open?
So I love the breakdown of the design process throughout the project, especially with a variety of input from students and handheld experience within the space, firsthand experience within the space. It does seem like the design conversation went smoothly, but I was wondering if there were points in the process that were more influential than others. Yes. I I mean, there's 2 points that I think we mentioned in this process. One was the point working early on with the educational specification where, you know, they literally handed us someone else's program and said, do this. And as we, you know, worked with them, we sort of started softly and moved around that conversation and really quickly realized that they wanted something different. And I think that was a big aha moment for us. The other big aha moment I remember was, you know, Stephen showed you those dots of like the cost and what a conventional system was and what a, you know, a more sustainable system was. And I remember that point where he was, you know, diving through the numbers, you know, because no one says pick this system. You know, you sort of like have all that information in front of you. And it really took, I think, seeing that there was a solution that was going to lower costs to go for it. So those were the 2 big aha moments I remember. I mean, could things have been more efficiently? I will say one of the reasons we got to do a lot with the district was that they didn't have a lot of standards in place. And so they were really open to those conversations. That also meant sometimes they like didn't have a standard. So for example, fall protection was something we worked out in construction. Stephen worked out in construction.
Not easy. Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't always smooth. Let's see, did the school switch to more sustainable landscaping? I don't know if I have an answer for that, Stephen, do you?
I haven't heard of that specifically. No, I know there were, you know, questions about pollen and other factors through the open windows and the natural ventilation. But yeah, no, I haven't heard. I mean, from our teacher feedback, there wasn't any complaint. I don't think we heard anything about unwelcome noise coming through or even smells coming through the windows. Some teachers enjoyed hearing the bird song. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question and it would be interesting to hear how the district's doing that.
Yeah, I know the center courtyard, you know, it doesn't have any natural grass in it, so it doesn't need mowers. So in fact, there's no really grass close to the building, so you can do a lot of that maintenance just with rakes and hand weeding and that kind of thing. Renee, do you want to take this one? It says, are there any security design components?
Exactly,
Go for it.
yeah. Yeah, because security, of course, is really close to my heart and all of our heart, of course. And there's so many, there's a whole spectrum of security. You know, the first thing everybody thinks about, especially after an incident, is the external intruder. And yes, I mean the fact that Abby described that we're routing everybody through the same entrance, where we actually have a secure vestibule, you know, where visitors can check in after the students are in the building, is one aspect of that. But then actually throughout the building, and this ties back to the idea about biophilic design, just reducing the overall stress level of students, because actually the main, you know, how should I say, relevant event for many students in their daily life is actually not the external intruder coming in, but it's actually like bullying or vandalism or, you know, any kind of tension throughout with their peers. And so lowering everybody's stress level by, you know, and that is actually I mean, for me, it was the most fulfilling statement we hear, that it feels just good to be in the building. I mean, Principal Kurt says this a lot. Actually, that's why he's still there. He says actually because it's such a great workplace. The students are happy, the teachers are happy. It just lowers, you know, everybody's temperature. So when there is an encounter, you are responding to that, you know, in a most likely non-aggressive way because you're coming from a different place. And so we try to, again, address safety throughout. And of course, one of the biggest aspects is this outdoor connection. We want kids to be able to go outside, but when there is no secure outdoor area, teachers or, you know, parents would be hesitant actually to allow the kids to actually exercise that. Hence, having a secure courtyard that is literally surrounded by a secure building and thus as secure, you know, as any other space in the building is a great way of creating that fluid environment where doors can be left open, art projects can happen indoor, outside. You don't have to worry about any students going in and out. So again, a secure courtyard is a major component of, you know, again, bringing everybody's temperatures down and being more relaxed, but also making everybody feel safe when they're outside enjoying nature in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, of course, there are blinds inside the building and outside the building, and you can do all the things you do to lock down the building.
And all this. Yeah,
but that's not the focus of the design. The focus is feeling good every day and then doing those things when you have to. I'll take this next one. It says, what really prompted steering away from the plans you were given to duplicate versus the learning design direction you guided them? So we weren't given plans, we were given a set of specifications, like kind of protocols for sizes of rooms, quantities of rooms, that sort of thing. And really, as we worked with the group of educators and administrators in the district, they described a much more interactive style of learning. We talked about learning for the future and this idea of collaboration, of making things, of moving around, inquiry. Those were all things that needed more space and more flexibility. And so having, really, it became really important to have space and also to have it close by, because as a teacher, if you have to choose, okay, I'm going to walk my students, around the building and down a flight of stairs to get to the special room where we can do those things, chances are you're not going to choose to do that. And it takes a special teacher, I think, to think ahead and plan for that. So having more resources in the room was really that basic concept. It wasn't about having lots of technology or lots of fancy things. It was just about having space, power, water, and furniture that would support whatever learning they want to do. And then the principal has done a lot of ongoing training with the teachers, and they do practice and they think about how they're going to use their spaces and switch spaces and all that. Let's see, what were some of your personal favorite details or spaces that were implemented into the project? You want to take that one, Renee?
Yeah, mine are definitely, I mean, I love stairs. I always think stairs are a really crucial element, especially if you have, 2 or more stories, because always what's going on in stairs, like the circulation, but there's also, it's like an active space for socializing. And so having like an edge on each stair or underneath the stair, a space that you can carve out, because it's kind of, I'm always looking for free space because we never have too much money, we never have too much space. But a stair is an area of it I can find free space, like under the stair, on the side of the stair, like a little bench or something. So these little moments, for me are always, and then seeing kids actually using them exactly like intended, and not just having a stair that goes up and down, and providing supervision, like seeing where you can see up and down. And anyway, so that was one of my favorite spaces, always like anything around the circulation and the stairs. Yeah. Maybe others. Yeah. Maybe Stephen. Yeah. What is your favorite? Yeah.
Sure. I'm just reminded of a fun moment during construction when they were installing a particular tree column, and it was hanging from the straps off the crane, and they were spinning it and asking, in the field, what rotation would we like for the branches to align. And, it reminded us of, when we had the scanned digital versions of those portions of the trees, we were able to play with that in our design model and study the alignments, but it was just kind of neat to see it in physical space aligning. And so yeah, that row of columns in the commons, it's really special.
I know we're almost out of time. I see a question. Is there one big lesson you learned that you ran into during construction?
Well, maybe because, our structural engineers used to joke, we literally used every possible wood actually every construction type possible, because we have mostly all wood members. We have like heavy timber, and we have the glue lamps, the whole tree columns, then the DLT, but we also have just wood trusses everywhere, for economics. Then we have like concrete shear walls and CMU shear walls, because during the pandemic, the availability of of certain masons changed, or carpenters, but not. And so literally, maybe reducing the number of structural systems would be a good lesson. But definitely we would maybe to simplify things. But again, we're trying new things, even with wood shear walls in the gym. That's the first time, I think, in our office that we built a gymnasium out of engineered wood studs, So it's pretty amazing to learn about all the different ways you can use wood, not only in mass timber, which is kind of one of the most expensive ways, but in a real economical way, even to support concrete floors, on the second floor or whatnot. Definitely.
I might just add to the wood construction allowed us to use wood studs, which really improved our thermal performance of the walls. I don't think we could have achieved that robust envelope without needing lots of thickness of exterior insulation without those wood studs. However, the Type 5B construction did require firewalls, and we were able to leverage that courtyard and the separation of the science wing to give us separation distance. So there were some lessons around that, but yeah, overall, happy to incorporate the wood in various ways, and learning also how to do the tall gym walls out of wood instruction as well.
So there's a question about the post-occupancy evaluation and what we would do differently if we incorporated feedback. I will be honest, it was a bit of a post-occupancy light. We actually worked with a researcher from U of O who she came up and did some very detailed thermal comfort and occupancy comfort studies for us. So that was awesome to have that data. There are a few rooms in the building that we've realized aren't performing the way they should. So there's some follow-up in terms of why that is. And, it's our suspicion is it's somewhere in the mechanical portion of the system. So that was good feedback to have, and nice to be able to go back in and talk to an owner about how they actually operate a building and how they keep it operating the way you intended it. Because sometimes you walk away and then you find out that, and we ran into one teacher who was like, oh, I didn't think that button on the wall did anything. And we're like, yes, it does. We didn't just make up a whole system and put a button there for you. So that was one thing I think is, just following up on some of the more minutia of the thermal comfort. Although I will say, by and large, the level of thermal comfort in the building for a building that does not have traditional air conditioning in most spaces is amazing. I mean, when it was 100 degrees 2 weeks ago, I was messaging with the principal and I said, how is it? And he said, it's fine. And that was the same week that my own kids at Portland Public had to get released 3 hours early because their buildings were not fine. So that was a good, understanding. Someone's wondering about the button if teachers actually use it. Because kids notice the light turns, and so kids will, hey, either they'll let the students go interact and push the button and open the windows. I think people open them pretty often. Not everyone does it. I mean, it's just like your own house. Do you remember to open your windows in the morning and let the cool air in? So sometimes you forget, but I think that was pretty successful. I do hear, I wish we could come up with a better solution for odors in restrooms. I think the functionality of the single occupant restrooms works great, but people complain that by the end of the day, it's not the freshest space, but it's probably true of a gendered restroom in a middle school too. So. I don't want to end on that note, so someone has to add another question. I know we're at 6 o'clock, so thank you all for coming. It was really, I think, a very special project. A lot of things aligned. Again, Lake Oswego School District was open to doing a lot of things that not every district is. And I think that really allowed us to create something that is very unique, very sustainable, very resilient, but also just really beautiful and really supports learning.
It's fantastic. Wonderful presentation, you all. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Bye-bye.